Welcome to my BIE semester project video submission, where to conduct a feasibility model on 3 different options. Option 1 was renting out the property on a year-to-year contract. Option 2, renting the property out using facilities such as Airbnb. And option 3 was selling the property and investing the money into a unit trust fund. For option 1, an average increase on the past rental incomes was calculated, and this average increase was used to forecast the new future increases in rent income. I know it could go up to a maximum of 8%, but since you can't ideally go up to a maximum of 8% for the same tenant, it was assumed that they were happy with the previous increases, which was an average of 4.8%. So to assume they'll be happy with it, and I can continue to increase it at that amount. With the Airbnb or option 2 income, and these are estimated rental incomes from Airbnb. It was, however, also found out that only 7% of the time you get one tenant staying for one night, and 88% of the time it's between 2 and 4 people. So I use these percentages as a weighting. Then the reason why I had it as 5, I assumed I can get a sleeper couch to add in an additional person and have 2 people in one room and 2 people in another room to go up to 5 guests. So using the weighting and these incomes, I was able to get an assumed average income of 8,929 Rand. Then for increases on this rent income, it was assumed that the rent income will go up by the assumed inflation rate at 4.9%, which gives us these new rental incomes over the 5-year period. Then the only expenses that option 2 has that option 1 does not have is that there will be a constant cleaning fee, which is assumed at 13%, and a service fee for using Airbnb at 13.78%. Then for expenses that are the same with option 1 and 2. So everything in red is for option 1 and everything in green is for option 2. So for the levies and rates and taxes, the past data was considered, and the increase over that period was calculated, kind of seeing what the inflation was over that period. This was just for my own interest in terms of what was the average increase, and actually found it was very close to what the price had inflated by during that period for both levies and rates and taxes. But I used 9.10% for levies and 8.68% for the rates and taxes. Then the property value was calculated the same way. However, it was found to be 5.02%. The maintenance cost is assumed to be 1% of the property value per annum. So obviously I needed the new property values to calculate the maintenance costs. All these costs and incomes are here in a monthly cash flow table for options 1 and 2, and then you can see the repayments that are only for option 1, 2, and that are shared here in the blue. Then for the new bond amounts, a lot of the new refinancing costs are the same with option 1 and 2. However, there is a slight difference. With option 2, with the Airbnb, we had to get an additional 50,000 Rand for finishing it. It was also assumed that the stove, it will be better to get as soon as possible, because the monthly increase on the stove at 1.2% is very high, which is a lot higher than the annual inflation percentage of 4.9%. So it's better to get that as soon as possible. Then we found it is better to invest the additional 35,000 Rand to get the additional 800 Rand income. This was validated, taking in consideration that you'll get an additional 800 with the increase of 4.8%, and this was compared with what the bond interest would be. The additional bond interest on the total bond amount, so it had to ideally beat that. So it was found in total there'll be additional 54,000 and only 18,000 in terms of interest. Then this was just from to double check even for myself. If you went and put the money straight into the bond instead of to pay it off quicker. You can actually pay it, that 35,000 Rand by October 2022 and have an additional 11,000. So for these bond amounts in option 1 and 2, I was able to calculate the bond repayments. This was a bit of a plug and play by just ensuring that the final repayment over the full 20 years, that the full bond pretty much gets paid over. So that I had to literally just use a bit of plug and play to ensure that it is accurate, and it is pretty much very accurate, the repayment for option 1 and option 2. Now this was just to check the extra income that will come in. Then, so here are the monthly cash flows, which include the bond repayments, and then the operating income is just the incomes minus all the expenses on this cash flow. Then here are the option 1 and option 2 end of project cash flows to get the total amount of cash at the end of it, taking into consideration capital gains, tax, agent commissions, and so on. For option 3, we found that it would be better to, we decided to go for the Absa Property Equity Fund with the annualized increase of 13.26%. So using this same percentage on whatever was left to invest after selling the property and paying off capital gains tax, agents commissions, and paying off the rest of the bond, we were left with 422,000, and that's what we were left to invest in the unit trust. In general, the reason why I went for the Absa Property Equity Fund is because it's quite a diversified equity fund with some property companies with offshore exposure, which really helps under these current economic environments. So the before tax cash flow and after tax cash flows were calculated in these tables over here. However, we did take into consideration what the current tax is, the forecasted tax that it will become with a 4% increase, and then the forecasted salary increase at 8%. So for option 1, this is the before tax cash flow and after tax cash flow table, and the same with option 1, 2, and 3, and then taking in all the cash flows into consideration and adding the end of project cash flows and comparing all three of them, we found that option 3 was better, which was investing in the unit trust, then option 1, which was the fixed rent income, and then option 2, the Airbnb. I think the reason why Airbnb fell quite a bit behind was all the additional expenses for Airbnb, and there had to be a lot more of a reinvestment into it. So that to me was the main reason for it not being as viable, and I think also for option 2 because there had to be a fair amount of reinvestment, where with option 3 it's not as much of a reinvestment that had to happen in terms of getting more loans out. So for me that was the main reason that option 3 came out. I think if the conditions were slightly different and not as much had to be reinvested, invariably I'm sure option 1 would have beat it, but under these current situation option 3 turned out to be considerably better. And then taking risk and uncertainty, obviously there's risk in any option. So when it comes to option 3, obviously anything in a unit trust is not 100% constant. So you can have years where you can have a negative gain. In option 1 and 2, obviously you can have problems where people just either don't pay, especially for option 1, and that can be very costly. In option 2, you can have very quiet months where not as many people use the Airbnb facilities. But in general, Option 3 was a better option.